President Trump's $12 billion Farmer Bridge Assistance Program claims of racism in the details. He's going to walk you through a lot of detailed information and what they're going to do next as an organization with 20,000 members. On the other hand, he's going to be talking about the recent Sixth Circuit Court of Appeals decision not to hear the Black Farmers NBAC appeal that just recently came down the pipe. So with that being said, Mr. Burrell, you're welcome.
Thank you, ladies and gentlemen of the press. My name is Thomas Burrell, and I am the president of the Black Farmers and Agriculturalists Association, which is headquartered, as you know, here in Memphis, Tennessee. We represent farmers, landowners, and particularly the heirs, granddaughters, grandsons of black farmers, sharecroppers, and landowners. As a result of a decision that was made, or two decisions that were made on this past Monday. Number one, as Ms. Rogers indicated, and we want to thank you again, Bishop David Allen Hall, for being with us in the spiritual capacity. On this past Monday, you recall the President of the United States, the Honorable Donald J. Trump, announced, among other things, that his administration is going to make an additional $12 billion under the name of, among other things, a bridge loan or assistance to farmers as a result of consequences associated with tariffs and deficits relating to trade agreements, particularly with China on the one hand, and as it affects American farmers, particularly grain farmers, soybean farmers, or as they would say in China, soya farmers. Ordinarily, BEFA would not be indifferent to the plight of all farmers. However, in this particular instance, in light of circumstances and events that have happened over the last several years, culminating in denying African American farmers and the sons and daughters of African American farmers the same rights and privileges that now the administration says it is going to make sure that is guaranteed to farmers in general. What we're simply saying is the $12 billion that the president is offering as a bridge loan, and definitely we are not opposed to the empathy or the sympathy that these farmers deserve. However, there is some hypocrisy here, and that the same administration who has it in its capacity to right some wrongs, as he called it, resulting from the Biden administration, that it is necessary for him to intervene and use taxpayer monies to solve some issues in agriculture. As I said, this is not a matter of our being indifferent to farmers. However, we have taken and will take the position that we are going to oppose this dispensation of funds, either through court, and particularly we're going to be asking members of Congress, the judiciary, both the Senate and the House, to hold hearings as to why this administration is capable of solving certain administrative problems that exist at USDA for the benefit of certain class of farmers to the exclusion of black farmers. You may recall that 4 years ago, the Biden administration, under the CARES Act, set aside roughly $4 billion for the benefit of minority farmers who had been the victims of racial discrimination, admittedly by Congress and the courts, as it relates to being denied certain loans and credit benefits by the Department of Agriculture. However, farmers, and unfortunately groups of white farmers around the country, filed federal lawsuits in various districts around the country, in Wisconsin. Even the Commissioner of Agriculture, the individual from the great state of Texas, Mr. Miller, Sid Miller, joined. He became one of the chief plaintiffs to do, among other things, and did succeed in doing, stopping the government from making these payments to black farmers. And they used, among other things, arguments that to pay black farmers was a violation of the Constitution. And they cited case law, they cited statute, they cited all kinds of regulations, going as far back as it were to Baldberry versus Madison. And federal courts agreed with them and said, yes, it is unconstitutional for the Biden administration to make certain payments, as it were, to minority farmers and not to, as the complaint stated, with specificity, white farmers. So what we're arguing is, if the Constitution then is what was being used to deprive African American farmers from a congressional mandate from receiving monies that they were to receive as a victim for racial discrimination by USDA, how can this same agency now, USDA, vis-a-vis the president, use its discretion to give to this group of farmers currently the $12 billion, what these very same farmers argued that was unconstitutional to do for black farmers? It's not a matter of our being anti-farmers. I am a farmer. I was born a farmer. I live to be a farmer. I will die a farmer. This is not anti-farming. This is about fairness. And we are asking that the citizens of this country join with us, white citizens. If we are now at the point, as we call it, to create a more perfect union and to do, among other things, to enjoy the blessings of liberty for ourselves and our posterity. But now to segue in, USDA is also providing schemes and platforms and devices to the federal court and using corporate America to create what they refer to as a guide. And the federal courts are using this particular guide to violate or to deprive the sons and daughters, the heirs of black farmers, from receiving the exact same benefit that every other citizen in this country enjoys, and that is a fundamental, God-given, constitutional right to inherit property. This is going back to separate versus equal again. And here again, we're saying that we cannot afford or should not allow this country, whether it's at the judicial level, whether it's through the judges, or whether it's from the administrative level or elsewhere, to take this country back into this dark night. So at the end of the day, that is the first thing that we're going to do, is oppose this particular payout. At the same time, on Monday, at the exact same time that the administration was announcing the fact that it was going to make this bridge loan available, the Sixth Circuit Court of Appeals, without any explanation, simply said that it is not going to allow the case before it, referred to as the Black Farmers and Agriculturalists Association versus Vilsack, or which is now the current secretary, Ms. Brooks Rollins, to proceed. That means now that here again, we still have judicial remedy, but we're going to have to do what the black community has done for the last 100 years, and we're going to have to go again to the highest court of the land. Black folks would still be sitting at the back of the bus were it not for the fact that we went to the Supreme Court. We would still be in segregated schools were it not for the fact that we have had to go to the Supreme Court. What is interesting here is that the Supreme Court spoke vividly, unequivocally, on June the 28th of 2024, when the Chief Justice, Justice Roberts, instructed those federal judges not to rely on a doctrine known as the Chevron doctrine, where these judges were allowing private institutions, private citizens to determine whether or not a person's constitutional rights should be upheld. The Supreme Court outlawed that decision on June the 28th of 2024 in a decision called Luther Bright, and instructed these judges to go back, particularly with pending cases, and use the quote-unquote Constitution and not, here again, guides that were manufactured, as it were. One of the things that we are also going to do is our members, one of the major corporations that was used and instrumental in creating this proverbial scheme, or this guide as it is referred to, as a corporation called the W.K. Kellogg's Foundation. We all know Tony Tiger, the Kellogg's Foundation, based in headquarters in Battle Creek, Michigan. We're going to be asking all of our members and people who are believers of justice to boycott the corporation referred to as Kellogg's. Kellogg's is now and has lent its resources to produce this proverbial guide, which we are referring to as nothing more than Willie Lynchism. That's what Willie Lynch was about, how to show slave owners, how to use guides and manuals and instruct them as to how to continue to oppress and manage their slaves, as it were. Here we are in 2025, and now you have corporations who are using their resources, a guide as it's called, to show Congress, to show, or at least the courts, how they can subvert and otherwise disenfranchise individuals who have now been able to receive civil rights as it relates to the right to own property, as it relates to the Civil Rights Act of 1866. It's when African Americans were given the right to inherit property, the right to establish an estate, to do, as we said, to enjoy the benefits and the fruits of a more perfect union, where you will be able to enjoy the blessings of liberty for yourself and your posterity, that is to say, your children. How can this corporation now, who is selling cornflakes and Rice Krispies, as it were, to the sons and daughters, the grandsons and granddaughters of African American farmers and otherwise, and landowners on the one hand, and you are also writing a scheme to instruct and show the Department of Agriculture and the courts how to deprive these very young grandchildren the right to inherit property. This is frightening. This is diabolical. The other thing we're going to be doing is we're going to, and this is why here again we would love to know, and we are glad that Bishop Hall and others are going to help us to call members of Congress, both the House and the Senate, particularly in the judiciary, to hold hearings to determine whether or not, as what the federal court said, did you, Congress, repeal the African Americans' right to inherit property? And these are some of the things that we're going to be doing in a nutshell. So thank you. Do you have any questions or comments or observations?
What is your message to farmers who simply say, who understand what you're saying? But
What is your question again? I'm sorry.
what is your message to farmers who understand what you're saying and what's going on? But they say they need this money, they need the funds that are going to be provided.
My explanation to them is this is a country of fairness and justice. It's not a question of need, it's a question of fairness. There will always be individuals, when you have a country the size of the United States of America, over 300 million citizens, there is no question there will always be individuals who are in need of some form of resource. That's not the issue. The issue is, are we arbitrary and capricious when it comes to how we dispense need, particularly to a group of individuals, farmers, who just left the courthouse and filed a lawsuit against that very agency that they're asking now to satisfy their need. Now, which is it? Are you going to ask that agency now to satisfy your needs now, or before or after you file a lawsuit over in federal court asking that same agency now not to make sure that the needs of other citizens are also recognized? It is a matter of hypocrisy. It's not that we are anti. Of course they need it. But was that an issue when you went, even the Secretary of Agriculture, Vilsack at the time, was in front of Congress explaining to Congress, to your point, why African Americans needed, as it were, these funds. African Americans owned 20 million acres of land in 1910, but as a result of systemic discrimination, have lost virtually all of that land. The federal courts have determined that African American farmers and their heirs are the descendants, and their descendants are the victims of systemic racial discrimination. However, was that argument suitable to stop Mr. Sid Miller in Texas, who represented the group of white farmers, who ignored the plea that even the Secretary of Agriculture was making to Congress as to why those black farmers needed those monies? But Mr. Sid Miller, the Commissioner of Agriculture, and all of the other farmers in South Dakota and Wisconsin and Tennessee, for that matter, and Missouri, who were filing a lawsuit in federal court saying, it's not a matter of need, Your Honor, it's a matter of the Constitution. So we believe herein it's a matter of hypocrisy. The question is not that these farmers don't need the money. The question is this administration, who is capable of satisfying their need, is this administration also capable then of satisfying the need of black farmers? It's not a matter of don't give it to A. The question is, if you're going to give it to A, why are you not going to give it to B?
So if Congress ruled in favor of your trying to do, what would be the major difference?
What would
be the major accomplishment if it goes your way?
The major accomplishment is we're not asking anyone to do anything that this country is not capable of doing. We're not asking this country to write a new law. We're not asking Congress to pass a new law. We're asking Congress in this particular case, because the argument has been, particularly the argument that the district court used here in Tennessee when it denied black farmers' heirs the right to participate in a lawful proceeding. When the Sixth Circuit Court of Appeals denied black farmers and their heirs the right to participate in a lawful proceeding. The issue is here again, why is it now we would use the Constitution or some other guide to deny these individuals? So a win for us is not so much to ask Congress to do something new. A win for us is the same thing that we're asking the citizens of this country, the president, the courts, the Supreme Court to do, and that is just to make sure that you recognize the constitutional rights of all of your citizens, to include the sons and daughters of black farmers. We're not asking this government to just do something for us. No, at no point in time in history that I am aware of at my age, and I've been in agriculture for over 70 years, where I've ever known an incident or a situation where a group of black citizens would come together to prevent any farmer or groups of farmers from receiving, to your point, badly needed aid. Nowhere in the history of this country will you find where black folks said, well, yes, if they need this money, if it's this group or that group, give it to them. We all need it. However, but you have a plethora of examples, a superabundance of examples where white farmers in particular will use the court system to deny African Americans when it's time for them to be recognized, African Americans, to compensate them or to grant them assistance for an admitted wrong. You're going to pay China, you're going to compensate farmers for what you argue China is doing. China has it in mind, and I'm not defending China, but I don't know where China has violated the constitutional rights of any farmer in this country. Sure, we'd like for them to buy more products, and while we're on that subject, isn't it interesting again that when we look at the president's announcement on Monday, he announced that this Department of Agriculture is going to do business with over 15 other countries: Guatemala, El Salvador, Vietnam, Thailand, Spain. Not one country from the continent of Africa is named. Africa has the second largest population of any continent. He named he was going to do business with people from the continent of Australia, Europe, Asia, North America, South America, but not one single country from the continent of Africa. Now connect those dots. So when you see there's a pattern here, you're going to give benefits nationally to every other farming group but African American farmers. And you're going to create trade agreements with every other country around the country but African countries. There's something, as I believe the statement was in Shakespeare, something is rotten in Denmark, okay? There's something wrong here. So we believe this administration, if you're going to correct certain problems, then start with here again. I love the phrase, let's make this country great again. We would be willing to do all that we can, but you ought to recognize the value and the contribution of people who helped to make this country great in the first place, and that's the African American community.
Bishop Hall, would you like to say something? Are there any more questions about the NBAC appeal? Because the black farmers are getting ready to have their attorneys file a lawsuit in the U.S. Supreme Court in Washington, D.C. You all want to elaborate or ask questions?
You want to talk about that also?
Right. We'll let Mr. Burrell talk about that NBAC appeal, and then Bishop Hall can.
Do you have a question specifically? Sir?
The question.
The NBAC appeal basically was the result of a split decision, for the lack of a better phrase, from the Sixth Circuit Court of Appeals, where a 3-panel judge was convened. 2 of those judges agreed with the Department of Agriculture. One senior judge declined, or shall we say, dissented. And usually when there is a dissent, you will then have the option to be able to file what is referred to as an en banc, or a full panel hearing. En banc is basically, we believe that the court, that there has been a sufficient issue raised that could have far-reaching effects, that could affect long-standing civil rights. And on that argument, we're saying that if the government were allowed, USDA in particular, were allowed to deprive African American farmers and their heirs from inheriting property, when and how long will it be before other agencies and or state governments use that lawsuit to start denying African Americans the right to inherit houses in Detroit or bank accounts in Los Angeles? This is the proverbial slippery slope. So we believe that there is a significant importance to tax. But evidently the Sixth Circuit Court of Appeals did not. They simply said, we're not going to hear it. And of course that means now that we will be able to file our attorneys, and we're filing right now what is called a writ of certiorari, preparing that writ to the Supreme Court. More specifically, we're working with other organizations around the country, asking them to file a friend of the court brief or an amicus or amicus curiae brief. And we have been talking to organizations, particularly the Legal Defense Fund in Washington, D.C., and others who are, we believe there is some significance here. This is far beyond, as we said now, just black farmers. And keep in mind, a decision like Plessy versus Ferguson in 1896 what we thought was just a simple decision where the Supreme Court said that separate is okay as long as it's equal. And we know what happened there. Okay, it took another 70 years. This was a semi-quasi form of extending slavery. Jim Crow raised its ugly head. So what we're simply saying, unfortunately, the court, we're dealing with human beings, okay? And history has shown that even human beings at the Supreme Court level have made decisions. Look at the decision with Dred Scott in 1857, Scott versus Sanford, where the Supreme Court ruled that Mr. Scott, Mr. Dred Scott, you don't have any rights that a white person has to adhere to. So we've been down this road before. And so what is so frightening here and foreboding is that we see now that there's a shift, particularly when federal judges are using guides that are made not from Congress, but from a cornflake manufacturer. That is frightening.
Bishop Hall. Any more questions about the Benbow appeal? And also, Congressman Cohen's office was contacted by the press conference along with the NAACP here. Mr. Kermit Moore is in D.C. and Congressman Cohen is out of town. We do have your support.
Thank you to the community. It's, in my word, it's about fairness. If the American farmer being hurt by the tariffs can now be issued support to the tune of $12 billion, then if those tariffs hurt them and the government in its largesse can give them $12 million in compensation, why isn't the fairness, historically speaking, and even today, the same for black farmers? As the ecumenical advisor and representative for this group reaching out to churches, I think that it's time that fairness becomes, in a very simple word, something that the government would embrace. Fairness. It's a simple expression, but it's so meaningful. And I would hope that these actions would create the opportunity for fairness across the board.
My only question is, what is your message to black farmers who feel like they've been fighting this fight for decades now? And yeah.
Certainly. You know, fatigue, exhaustion is a reality. But you never get anything when you turn away and walk away from your righteous claim. This is a matter of it being a spiritual thing. That's why, as ecumenical advisor, I'm here to speak to the spiritual needs. Depression, frustration, those things are real. And it almost seems as if you have no recourse. Well, you lose your way. And to hang in there and to continue is what we want to encourage. But it's a matter of fairness. It's a matter of fairness. How can you give one group $12 billion because they were hurt because of tariffs, but then we have systematically been denied, been set aside, and even the group that's receiving the $12 billion at one time, as Mr. Burrell said, filed a lawsuit to keep black people from stating their historic righteous claim. Where's the fairness? Maybe somebody can just hear that simple plea.
For the record, Bishop, could you say and spell your name, please, and your title one more
Yeah,
time?
I'm Bishop David Allen Hall, D-A-V-I-D-A-L-L-E-N-H-A-L-L. I'm a bishop in the Church of God in Christ, and I'm the ecumenical advisor to BIFA.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Here again, do you have any other questions? And if not, we appreciate you for helping us to explain, as it were, our position and the rationale behind the positions that we're taking today.
When will you all be coming before us again?
When will we, what, sir?
When will you all be updating on your actions here?
Well-
Where's the next report?
Of course, we're coming up to the holiday season, but more than anything else, we're updating our members at least twice a week, vis-a-vis Zoom meetings. And I was on a rather lengthy discussion or call this week with our attorneys, talking about the strategy that we're going to use going forward. And we will continue to keep you updated as well. This is a matter that we believe is of extreme significance, and it's, at the end of the day, it's a matter of who we are as a country. This is not Cambodia. This is not North Korea. We've gotten some dark nights behind us, and we can't afford, and we would like to think that all law-abiding and God-fearing citizens of this country, no matter what your color, your background, or your origin, would say, wait a minute, this is wrong, and join us and support us.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, members of the press. I appreciate you taking time tonight.
We get them bags, we get them bags. Every drop, get it gon' fast. We open up shop. You can be mad, I'm something you not. You want a jack, then you can get shot, cause we not that vulnerable. Nope. In the streets, I'm a beast, I'ma eat like a carnival. Let's go, you know what I'm about. We get them bags, every drop, get it gon' fast. We open up shop. You can be mad, I'm something you not. You want a jack, then you can get shot, cause we not that vulnerable. Nope. In the streets, I'm a beast, I'ma eat like a carnival. Let's go, you know what I'm about. We get them bags, we get them bags. Every drop, get it gon' fast. We open up shop. You can be mad, I'm something you not. You want a jack, then you can get shot, cause we not that vulnerable. Nope. In the streets, I'm a beast, I'ma eat like a carnival. Let's go.